shortly, JT. Still to come on Weekend Sunrise, another Dancing with the Stars All-Star is revealed. Plus, pandemic hair loss, why a growing number of Aussie patients are losing up to 70% of their hair. Good morning, thanks for being with us here at Weekend Sunrise. Well, hair loss clinics around Australia are reporting a surge in the number of patients. Some have tripled, with the coronavirus partly to blame. Hair loss is a COVID side effect, with actress Alyssa Milano posting a video of her personal cost.
But stress is also a major factor in hair loss, and after the year we've just had, it's perhaps no wonder that Aussies are losing up to 70% of their hair. Professor Rod Sinclair is a dermatologist who specialises in hair loss. He joins us now. Morning to you, Professor. Good to see you again. So how significant is this level of hair loss being seen in Australia?
Well, we're fortunate in Australia in that the number of cases of corona has started to fall, but certainly in Australia, when the pandemic was rife in Melbourne, we were seeing a lot of hair loss, and the hair loss starts about 3 months after the infection, so it's a delayed reaction. And what we know from some of the registries that we set up with our international colleagues is that about a third of the people who get coronavirus are getting significant hair loss, usually about 2 to 3 months after they've had that infection.
Gosh.
And it can be significant. As you say, it can be up to 70%. You can judge that, particularly in women, by the thickness of their ponytail. And they feel that the ponytail that was really thick before it all started just is shrinking in front of their eyes with all that hair shedding.
30%, gee, that's high. We've seen stories this week about lingering fatigue, breathing issues for recovering patients. So, of course, the impact really serious. But hair loss is quite a shock. Some people losing up to 70%, as you mentioned. How severe are these cases that you're seeing and hearing about? And does it persist, I guess, once patients recover from COVID?
Well, it is severe, and it certainly frightens the life out of you when you suddenly find every time you touch your hair, your hands are just full of the hair. And it's an incredibly distressing side effect. Fortunately, it does tend to improve after about 3 to 4 months, and there's a gradual recovery. And also, many of the drugs that we use for ordinary patent hair loss are also effective in this condition. So not only does it improve by itself over time, but there are things that your doctor can do to help that.
Right. Gosh, if ever we needed any more reasons to do everything possible not to get COVID, there's another one. Can I just ask you, just apart from COVID, what do you recommend in general for people who start losing their hair?
Well, if you're starting to lose your hair, there's some really simple things you can do. There's actually products you can get from your hairdressing salon that are very sophisticated and that will slow down the hair shedding. But if you're starting to see scalp, if you're noticing that there's hair coming out in your brush or comb, or your ponytail's gradually getting thinner over time, or if you're starting to see some visible scalp in your part line, then there are some things that you can do, and there's been some great innovations that have actually started in Australia through Melbourne University, through researchers here, to develop some new drugs that are now widely used all over the world, including minoxidil and finasteride, which are some incredibly effective treatments that make hair loss today an optional event. So it's not, once you start to lose hair, it's no longer compulsory that you're on a trajectory to baldness. There are things that you can do that'll put a handbrake on the hair loss and actually stimulate some hair regrowth.
Professor Rod Sinclair, Professor of Dermatology at the University of Melbourne, really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
It's going to speak to a lot of people, I'm sure. Coming up on Weekend Sunrise, Jimmy Kimmel's disastrous attempt